Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about how Democrats built one of the most successful political machines in the unlikely state of Nevada. So, if we look at the Our Progress forecast right now, we can see that Joe Biden has a 77.6% chance of winning in Nevada, and he's projected to win around 51.7% of the vote to Donald Trump's 45.2%, with most of his vote share coming out of Clark County, which holds Las Vegas and most of the state's population. If we look at the 2016 election, just a real quick side note, we can note that Nevada was one of the only swing states that went to Hillary Clinton. Even though she was leading in many sort of quote swing states, she only wound up carrying at the end of the day Nevada, Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, and then Colorado if you consider that a swing state. So Nevada is considered one of the stronger states for the Democratic Party in terms of results in recent history. In 2018, they had very strong results at the state level and at the Senate level, and we'll get into that a little more in depth. But right now, I want to answer the question, how did this happen? How did this political machine come to be, and who's responsible for it, and what can other states sort of take from it? And the one person who is mostly accredited with creating this machine is Senator Harry Reid. Harry Reid was a senator from the state of Nevada, and he became the Democratic Senate leader, majority leader even, in 2006. And if we look here, he launched, the quote-unquote launch date of this operation was around in 2004, and we can see the fundraising numbers 2004 through 2010 rose dramatically. So this is a state that went from, gaining anywhere from 2 million to 100,000 to 1 million in an election cycle, all the way up to its peak of 20 million in 2010. And so this is a really significant figure because it shows that Harry Reid was able to bring significant amount of outside money into a state that really needed it, or a really critical, a really key swing state, and then he was able to utilize it effectively, and we're going to be able to look at how he utilized it effectively through voter registration numbers. So right here we have Nevada voter registration by year by party, and if we look all from 1952 to even around 2004, we can see that the figures between the party are pretty much in this statistical gridlock by the time that we get to 2004. 2004, it was extremely close, with either party before then taking the lead, but that's pretty insignificant. The machine starts around 2004 to 2006, and that is when we can see that gap here. We can see that the Democratic Party really takes off. They were able to add around 100,000 registered voters, whereas Republicans lost around 4,000 registered voters. And since then, the Democratic Party has not done as strong, especially when you compare it to Republican voters. However, that lead that was built from 2004 to 2008 was so significant that the Democratic Party is still reaping the effects of it today. And the people that Harry Reid sort of targeted and went after were Hispanic and Latino voters. And he came to this conclusion after he looked at a map of Nevada, and he saw that the vast majority of the electorate, so let's look here, Joe Biden expected to win around 600,000 votes to Donald Trump's 556. And if we look at Clark County, the projected numbers in there, 466,000 to 345,000 for Donald Trump. So around 2/3 of the projected vote are going to come out of Clark County, and that is extremely important. And Harry Reid saw that Clark County was not turning out proportionately to its population when looking at the entirety of the state. And he saw that one demographic in particular that was extremely represented in the state, Hispanic citizens, were not voting in as high numbers as other demographics. So he went out and he registered an extremely large amount of Hispanic voters, and he really encouraged them to turn out, but especially to turn out in early elections. So he used his political connections to really stress and to really emphasize the early elections that were going on in the state. If if Republicans in control were going to enact voter suppression or any tactic like that, him and the very sort of powerful culinary union which he had by his side would threaten to sue, which actually did happen with the Secretary of State in Nevada, who was a Republican in one of the elections. If we look at the Nevada State Senate, we can see that in 2004, at the launch of this quote-unquote political machine, Democrats had just come off an extremely long sort of losing streak in the Nevada State Senate, with Republicans holding 12 pretty steady, holding a majority since the chart begins in 1992. But then that immediately changes. Democrats start gaining seats pretty rapidly, and in 2008, they actually gain a majority for the first time in recent history. And then they are able to hold that majority for a pretty long time, losing an embarrassing defeat in 2014, but then coming back for an all-time high in 2018. So this is a pretty significant fact to say that the Democratic turnout process that is still working in Nevada today is a result of really initiatives that were started in 2004. We can also see reflected in polling averages and polling bias in the state of Nevada. So if we look here, we can see that the polling bias is Republican leaning around 2 points, and in 2008 it was Republican leaning around 7 points. Both statistical biases in these state polls are heavily favoring the Republican Party when looking at the rest. So most states are favoring the Democratic Party except Nevada. So what this means is that there are more Democratic voters in Nevada than the polls are able to track and find. Essentially, Harry Reid was so successful in targeting and registering voters in the state of Nevada for the Democratic Party that they are not able to be identified as likely voters by polls. So this is a pretty significant thing to look at. Again, I just wanted to briefly go over what the political machine in Nevada is and sort of what the implications of the Nevada political machine are. I'm going to probably take a look at some of the other political processes in different states. So let me know if you like this video. I had a good time researching, so thanks so much for watching.